Many people really don't look at how important courage is. And courage is something that can be developed, groomed, improved on, and it's a process. I'm of the opinion now, at this stage of my life, that other than rocket science, and even with that, if you have the aptitude, you can learn that. You could learn just about anything. How to have courage, how to be successful, how to have better friends. All these things can be learned. So I'm going to drop some knowledge, share some things with you that I really haven't talked about with anyone else, and try to connect the dots because sometimes we're doing the right things and we're using universal law correctly, but we don't know what we're doing. It just comes out favorably. But if you were to ask me when this went down, I wouldn't have been able to give you the correct answer. I would have said, oh, she thought it was cute, or she would have said, or, something. None of that happened. None of that happened because early in my life, and it's something a lot of men go through, just wasn't really comfortable talking to women. Just wasn't. And after the divorce, and I was homeless, then moved into the boarding house, I had one of those moments where you just throw caution to the wind. I was sitting in, and this is the funny thing. I was in this boarding house. I was in this room, but I had a $3,800 computer. I was on Love AOL. Tell you how long ago that was. And one night I was there with my dial up, and I was just looking around. It's like, God, these women are nice, but I don't make a lot of money. I'm living in the boarding house. I don't even have a car. What can I offer somebody in this sorry state that I call my life? So I sat up, grabbed some paper, and I started writing down things that I could do for a woman. And I said, I can be her friend. I could be a good companion. I can have sex with her. That was for me and her. And another thing, I just, wrote this stuff out. And there were so many things that I could do that it gave me the courage to, I went hard. There was this one, she was gorgeous, just gorgeous. And it put down that she was in medical school. And I was like, fuck it. So I put my little pictures up online and I sent her this 5-paragraph email. Hey, this is where I'm at. This is what my name is. This is what I'm doing. And I just sent it, right? And I didn't really know what to expect. I wrote down everything in this 5-paragraph email on what I could give her. And I thoroughly explained my situation because when you're living in a boarding house, and you meet someone and they come over, they're going to know that you're living in the boarding house. It's kind of like those people who are doing catfish now, but they expect because of their glowing personality that the folks are just like, hey, you have 4 eyes and 2 of them are on top of your head. Don't go for that. So I did this, and like 30 minutes later, she responded. And I was like, okay, so we're talking and talking and talking. Then we eventually met up. I am riding Marta. So I meet her at this, this was before coffee shops became ubiquitous. I actually met her at Red Lobster. And, I put my little coins together and she showed up and she was better looking in person. And we had a great dinner and I tried to pay. And she's like, look at your situation. Don't worry about that. She paid for our first date and took me home back to my boarding house. And I got a little scared because it was like, she was such a high caliber person. And when I say high caliber, it wasn't because of her educational credentials. She was just a seriously nice person. I tried to break it off after about 4 weeks because I felt bad about myself. And she was like, I'm not letting you go. So long story short, living in a boarding house, my roommate next to me is a crackhead. And I'm dating this gorgeous woman who has this incredibly bright future. So we go on and date for 6 months. And this is during the period when I start transitioning from bum to what I used to call Scheme Incorporated, which now what I call the Hustler Mindset Project. And I started making these changes. Now, I couldn't tell you what happened, but essentially I used 2 things. I'll talk about more in another webinar, but I will just touch on this because it's not the focus of this webinar. The law of attraction and the law of intent. I didn't understand how powerful those two things were. By taking time out to sit down and actually write out, essentially I was writing out my fears. I was solving my fears in a written form. And then each time that I wrote it, and when I sent her the email, it had even been cleaned up more. And I actually felt pretty good about myself, even though I was in a very sorry state, because you will hear this term in our society frequently. If you living at home with mom and dad, you don't have a job, you don't deserve to date. And I thought about that. And if you meet someone who rocks your world, and everyone that's listening to me knows that that is very, very rare. You'll meet plenty of people that you're attracted to and they're attracted to you, but you don't always meet someone that rocks your world. And if you use what I call pedestrian standards that you must have a job, you might miss out. A very good friend of mine married a guy that when she met him, he didn't have a job for a year and a half, and they started dating. And it was very surprising because she was a member of my book club. And when I said that, and she's like, I was like, Jay, I just let it go. She had changed and she didn't want to realize how narrow and shallow she was. But by making that move, she found the love of her life. So understand, when you dare to do something that scares the shit out of you, you can surprise yourself. What I learned from that experience, another experience, it's not an overnight process because, as I said, I waffled. I kind of went back and forth. I didn't really claim it. I didn't understand exactly how those things were working. And really, it took me a good 6 years from that point to really kind of understand how to work that thing. And I didn't, and really until maybe 4 years ago, because I was reading, this is a very good book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph E. Murray. I read it 4 times, but I didn't really grasp the concepts because I lacked courage. Because I know it's going to sound very, very strange to you. You want something nice. You want something grand in your life. But if you don't have the courage to claim it or the courage to say, hey, I'm not going to say deserve it. I earned that. I can earn that. I can get that. Because the word deserves brings up a connotation that you have to do something. I'm going to tell you, and this is going to be up in another webinar. When you learn how universal law works and the power of the law of attraction and the power of the law of intent, you will be amazed at what you can pull into your life without what we're taught is backbreaking effort. There's times that you can just want something and want it the correct way and get it. I know it's kind of crazy, and that's part of the courage thing because it takes a while to really absorb these concepts because from kindergarten up to you getting your bachelor's, your master's, you're taught to work within a system. You're taught to govern yourself a certain way. You're not taught to create your own systems, and you're not taught to create your own life. You're taught to work your life into the fabric of others. And it's a lot of regurgitation. But in this journey, what I did was create that small step with her because later on I did more stuff. And, it's just incredibly powerful. But what you want to do is create small situations that you can win and build on those experiences. Because what most people want to do is go from this term I heard as a kid. They want to go from ashy to classy in 60 seconds. And it's going to be longer than that. But essentially, when you create these small situations, like, for example, say you are really terrified of meeting new people, or you feel awkward and strange when you go to a party and you don't know anyone. Those are small situations. You can go to a party and the next time you can say, I'm going to meet 5 people and I'm going to talk to them for 5 minutes. And I know it sounds like, hey, that's kind of crazy. But if you do it, then the next party you go to and you do the same thing, It gets to a point where meeting people is not scary or terrifying. And you can do this with these 5-minute meetings. You don't have to go to the party and meet everybody and remember everyone's name. I have met people at the party, and sometimes some people are not memorable. There are other people, I meet them, I'll never forget their name. There's some folks I've talked to for an hour and just and see them in the store, and it's like, I know this is rude, but what is your name? Don't even play, because the thing is, they'll appreciate the honesty. But create those small situations frequently in your life, because this is what happens with your courage reservoir. If you are feeling a lack of courage, you're not feeling as brave, your tank is empty. By putting these experiences in there, and see, the thing is, it's just like a penny. Enough pennies will make $1,000,000. It's a hell of a lot of pennies. Same thing with nickels, same thing with dimes, same thing with quarters, same thing with dollars. The thing is, if you keep putting that, courage currency in the bank, at some point it's going to be a significant amount, even if you start off very, very small. Now, this is the problem that most have. When you make that transition in self, there's going to be blowback. There will be resistance. There will be, some of your friends may even think you're odd. Whenever I was, back in the 90s, when I would talk about personal development, I'll talk about Tony Robbins, people, their eyes would roll over and they're like, yeah, that guy. And it was just like immediately downgraded or disregarded. So there's a lot of pressure with changing, but you have to consistently challenge yourself to grow. You cannot take plays off, as my football coach used to say. You can't. If you're in the elevator, and understand, we all only have 24 hours. No one gets 26, no one gets 30. We all have 24. So if you're in the elevator and there's this person that you want to talk to, start talking. They may appreciate it, they may not, but that's not the point. The point is, you're putting some of that currency in your bank. That one little exchange adds up. Everything that we are, everything that we have, comes from how we think. To change who you are and to get different outcomes, you have to change how you think and conduct yourself. It sounds overly simplified. There's no magic jelly beans. There's nothing crazy. There's no genie out the bottle. But that's what happens when you deal with the pressure of change. Because your biggest enemy is going to be you. Because you were brought up, if you're like 25, 30, 40, there was all of these years of indoctrination by society that you may have to regurgitate, or you may have to reorientate some of these beliefs or core values to actually grow and change. Because one of the things that I see frequently is people are very hard pressed to leave their tribe. And what I mean by that is, if your father was a brick mason and he teaches you how to be a brick mason, and you might have the ability to be a brain surgeon, sometimes people will not leave that life because they don't want to dishonor their family. Because if it was good enough for dear old dad, it's good enough for me. Loyalty like that is admirable, but at some point, if you deny yourself things that you can do out of misplaced loyalty, it can be detrimental. There's nothing wrong with honoring your parents, but sometimes you have to see past the tribe to be who you are. Because as long as you stick with that tribe, you're going to yield the same results. That's why you have generational poverty, and that's why you have generational wealth. It's a system that is set up to be automatic. Think about the people that you know that are not really successful, and look at the families where everyone is doing well, and look at the families where half the family's doing okay, the other family's ass out. And understand, and this is another shocking concept, you can have the best parents in the world, all the money in the world, and still grow up to be a turd. Environment plays a role but intent, self-direction, and personal choices are more important than all of that. And that's one of the things that really gets me with our society, because this is where you get the pressure from. When you look at things that are socially sanctioned but don't really work, and you try to move away from the herd can bite you in the ass. But consistently challenge yourself to grow and to make a habit of doing things you don't like. And I know this is going to sound really crazy, a little nutty. Say there are a lot of people that don't like the opera. Now, I took commercial art for 4 years in high school, and we had to go to the opera, we had to go to art shows, and my little lips were turned up like, I don't want to go to the opera, that stuff. And I was like, one day I asked myself, my teacher asked me a very good question. She said, "Why don't you like the opera?" I was like, "Well, it's stuffy." And she says, "Have you been?" And I was like, "No, how do you know it's stuffy?" And I said these words, "I heard it was." And she said, "Sometimes you need to learn and see for yourself." And we went to this opera at the University of Alabama. They had the musicians, all kinds of stuff. And some of that stuff was just so awesome. It was beautiful. There's a lot of opera I can't stand because I don't like it. It's a personal taste. But there's other things that are just amazing. And I didn't know that, but I had allowed social sanctions and things that were taught to me to actually make a choice for me on something I didn't know about. And that's where the fear comes from. And that's why you got to have the courage to actually open your mind and look at something that's a little different. And the biggest thing is learning to believe in you. This goes back to adding up those wins. When you consistently set yourself up in small situations where you consistently win, you'll feel better about yourself and you'll feel better about your capabilities. Because there will be days that you're going to try to do this stuff and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. It's not going to be hitting. Then you're going to hit weeks and months and years where most things work. And that was my 6 year process because I didn't fully understand. I read the book, but I was regurgitating so many things that were getting in the way that if I was a blank slate and didn't have cultural indoctrination, when I read that book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, the first time, I'd probably be worth about 80 million right now, maybe 100 million. But I would just sabotage myself because of my upbringing. For you to have nice things, you must work very, very hard. And if you don't work very, very hard, you're not going to have nice things. And that's why a lot of people have what I call rich people hate, because you can have a guy, his father did well. He's like, hey, here's some money. And this guy has an amazing life and they didn't do anything to earn it. And we look down upon those people when really, if you evolve your mindset and go, well, wow, dad was awesome because he created this legacy and environment for his children. But more people look at it like, well, I don't consider that person successful because they don't have to work as hard as I do. And that's more of tribalism. And if you have that type of tribalism and those mindsets, guess what? You'll never be rich because you actually despise being rich. And you'll only be rich if you work extremely hard and earn it. Maybe, giving up 2 decades of your life, maybe three, maybe four, maybe five, maybe six. So understand there's a lot of things that go with this because I have this expression and I've said it for years. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to be yourself because many people are just not that brave. I mean, who you are is an evolution in self. And a lot of people don't make that journey because society labels you and says, hey, you have to be this. And it can be very, very daunting. Now, this is the scary part. This is very, very scary. When I did it, because, during the dating thing, I wrote just down some of my fears. About 2001, we're in the storage auction business. We did 90,000 the first year. Now that's gross. That wasn't all profit. Don't get crazy. And it was split between two people, but it was still nice money. The second year, I was kind of like slipping and I was afraid because success was coming so quick. And most of my life, I had to work and claw and tear and I had to do all of these things. And I was actually afraid of the success. So I'm always reading personal development books or articles or blogs or something. And I read something in the blog, and I'm telling you, some of the most arcane, obscure blogs can have awesome information that it could be for you. And it was just something about personal development exercise. So I wrote down all of my fears. And it was a ugly night because I felt like a scared little bitch. So many of those scared, it was just like, woo, you're scared of that? I mean, when you take it out of your mind and you put it on paper and you look at it, it forces you to have a perspective that you don't have when it's just rolling around in your noggin. And I really felt bad about myself because some of those fears was like, really? You're sad, dude. I mean, it was a humbling experience because sometimes you kind of have fears, but you don't really define them. You never really look at them. They're just there. Or when that thing that pops up, then boom, they just come running out. That exercise changed my life. We started tripling and doubling our income in the storage auction business because I worked very hard, but I also understood that I had to give myself permission to make the money. There are many people, that's why I'm telling you, that's why so many people who win the lottery, they don't feel they deserve the money. It was too easy. And they do everything in their power to get rid of it because they feel tainted or they feel, "Hey, I don't want to be considered like those rich people. I'm not like that. I'm an ordinary human being." No, you're not. You're a person that got extremely fortunate and you won a lot of money and you're acting like a jackass because you don't know how to deal with money. And I talked about this on YouTube in one of my videos. Your relationship with money. Many people have an extremely bad relationship with money. So when you make this list of all your fears and you look at them, it can like make you cry. It can have you smiling. It can shock you. You're going to feel some kind of way. And actually, the biggest thing is actually to start writing that list and looking at it. And this is exercises for you. It's not for your mom. It's not for your wife. I highly suggest if you're married, do it on your own. Tell your husband what you're doing, tell your wife what you're doing. And so, look, I need to do this for myself because I don't know how this is not a group exercise. And if you're married, tell your husband or wife to do the same thing. And after you have looked at them and you've kind of come to terms with it, because some of it, there's some denial. And sometimes, I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy moment. Once you are dealing with it, then you can talk to someone about it. But on the initial thing, I highly suggest you do it by yourself. You keep it to yourself. And then once you've owned it and said, okay, these are my fears. I'm being honest with myself. I can deal with this. I can overcome it. Then we go to the Pro 7 method. This is something that I just came up with because I was I was at a seminar, a sales seminar, and this guy was just so obstinate. He just kept like ask him again, ask him again, ask him again. So I went back to the hotel room and I started using this on a lot of different things. But for fear, the Pro 7, you ask yourself, why are you afraid? Because many times, if you remember the movie I, Robot, and the guy was like, that's the right question. If you're asking the wrong questions, you're just not going to get to the right answer. So you have to go like, why am I afraid? And then when you get to that, when did this start? And why did it start? Because I give you an example, going back to the opera thing. I was told by family members that opera was whack. I was a kid and I took them at their word. That's why I was afraid of going. That was it. It had nothing to do. See, some of your fears don't you didn't organically own. They were given to you. They was like, here's something. Have this fear. Have it. This is for you. That was one of the gifts from your parents. That fear. I'm going to talk about something that's very controversial and it may piss some people off, but with what's, just for the sake of this webinar, this is my thought on race. I only believe in one race, the human race. And when you do the research, you'll see that there is only one. But for the sake of this webinar, talk about black, white, brown, whatever. A lot of racism is inherited. Somebody like, or take a kid who lives in the neighborhood and he gets beat up 20 times in 3 years by black people just because he's white. Okay, that's organically earned racism. It's like when I show up, black people really treat me bad. I can understand that because every time your experience is with a black person, it's been very negative. That's not how most racism occurs. Um, if you watch my videos, I date everything under the sun, and I've had white girlfriends, Asian girlfriends, Indian, whatever. And invariably, at some point, you have that conversation. And I've had white women tell me, my father told me not to date black guys. Don't bring any black people home. And I was like, what? He give you a reason? She said, no, it's just, she said his exact words was, it's just not a good idea. He never gave her any type of logical excuse. And that's how it happens. I grew up with a hippie. My mother never said, don't bring a white girl home. Don't. She just like, if love whoever you meet well. She never, and that's one of the things that I appreciate about my mom. She never gave us that. And I know black folks who have said that, like, don't you bring a white girl home? Don't you bring you know, which is teaching your kids racism. And people would disagree with me. It's like, no, it's about cultural pride. No, you're teaching your kids racism. And a lot of people like to own that. And that's how it's one of those insidious gifts because you could be culturally strong, very culturally proud, and not hate anybody. It's very easy to do, but one of the reasons is with a lot of that cultural pride thing is a heavy, heavy dose of hate. So understand when I start having these conversations, this is just throughout my life. You start talking to people and you probe and you ask these questions, you just get these revolutions. And when you add logic, it's like, does this make sense? And a lot of times it's like, no. And you ask yourself again, did it ever make sense? And it's like, no, it didn't make sense. And another thing, sometimes you think there are things that are fears when they're really superstitions, which are once again stuff that you adopted or was given to you. So when you start, and do this with each fear, just ask all of these questions with each fear, write it out, and you will start to decipher the fear and take it apart. And when you take it apart and you break it down, this thing that was really huge starts to become really small. And when it gets small, it's very manageable. And then you start to make sense of stuff. And when you make sense of stuff and it clicks and you connect the dots, it's easier to overcome. And my favorite question is, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen? When I became an entrepreneur, I asked myself, it's like, what could happen? I could fail. What does failure mean? You won't make any money. You could lose money. You'll be embarrassed. I just went through the whole progression of all the ugly things that can happen. And out of all the things that I conjured up in my mind, 90% didn't happen. About 5%, sometimes 10%, depending upon the year. 90% of it didn't happen. 90%. 90 to 95% didn't happen. And that's when I failed. It just didn't happen. People laugh. It's just you conjure up these fears, which will paralyze you and it'll hold you back. And it's just amazing that the boogeymans that we create in our own minds, that if we open up our minds and look at the boogeyman, we'll see that he's 2 inches tall. He's not 7 feet. He's not a mile tall. He's 2 inches tall. But we keep giving him energy where he looks bigger. It's like that shadow effect where you got your fingers in the light and the shadow is like 7, 10 feet tall. That's what we do with our fears. Another way for you to get a grip on you is to start writing about your life. Start writing about your thought process because it gives you so much perspective. When you have to sit down and really think about, why am I doing what I'm doing? And come up with logical answers and talk to yourself, this increases your perspective dramatically. When you do this, and I'm not trying to be funny, but if you do this frequently and you should have this self dialogue, and when you start talking to people, they're going to think you're wise. because many people have similar questions. They've just never asked themselves. So when you have a logical, sound, reasonable answer to one of life's queries because you delved into the journey of yourself and you talk to someone else, they're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to make you their BFF. They're going to say, God, you're just one of the wisest people. You're really good people to talk to. Because a lot of people don't think about their lives. They react. Writing about you, it just forces you to think deeply. And the deeper you think, the better stuff that you come up. Because essentially, the minutia of life and the layers of indoctrination build up to where the real you is so deep in you, it takes a journey and exploration to get there to figure out who you are. I know it sounds crazy because when I started in the storage auction business, I owned it. I was like, I'm a hustler. And I'll say it on Facebook and I'll say it on YouTube. And, hustling, that was the video that was playing earlier if you were one of the first ones. Hustling has a negative connotation, like hustling. And I love it. I love hustling. And hustling isn't getting over on somebody, but I defined myself. I didn't let anyone else do it. And there are other people that try to do it. And then I was like, no, this is what I do. Because people try to define you, because when you define yourself and you make yourself personally big, it's hard for people to get a grip on who you are. I've had people tell me, it's like, I just can't figure you out. I was like, I'm pretty simple. It's like, I just can't figure you out. It's like, you're this asshole on YouTube. You donate money to people, you help people out, but you won't give away your information free. I was like, those are totally different concepts. And see, this is the thing. As a person, there's no one you, there's layers of you. There's an incredible expanse of you. And what I've learned is to be honest, to be open, and to be really, really careful with my affection and tender side, because everyone doesn't deserve that. It's not a scared thing. It's like your money. You have to be careful how you spend your money. If your best friend who was in basic training with you and you went through a lot of life challenges comes to town and you go to this fancy restaurant and it checks $300, you throw your credit card down and you throw the cash on the table, no problem, because that's your friend. But you just meet somebody you really don't know, you don't really connect with, that's hell of expensive. Same dinner, same place, different perspective. And that's how you have to start looking at how you handle yourself with other people. Because as you start to grow, you outgrow some of your friends. And this is not to say get rid of your friends. It's just, I have two friends who I've known them 20, 30 years that just can't understand the stuff I do because they've never went on this journey. And they're both corporate people and they follow a life path I don't follow. So it makes it very hard for them to understand me. I understand them easily. One of them's getting married, and I know exactly why he's getting married. And it had nothing to do with love. It's fear. And I didn't tell him that because when someone's scared and you address that fear before they address that fear, they'll hate you. I've learned how to manage my friends because being a person that's kind of lived their own life on very different terms, it makes you an odd duck. So that's another thing I should prepare you for, because when you start doing this stuff, you'll be incredibly happy intrinsically. You'll be happy and understand you're going to look at people a little differently. And it's not that you're better than they are. You just have a higher understanding of yourself and how you relate to the world. And a lot of people they're not there yet, and they may never get there. And it's real hard for them to understand you because you're on a different journey. You're on a journey of elevation. You're on a journey of growth, whereas they're stagnant or in many cases regressive. So when you're doing all this, understand it will change you and it will change how people deal with you. Now, once you did the probe 7, you got to set goals. You have to set goals and an action plan. Say you have a fear of dancing. On your calendar, you put on your calendar, I'm going to take dance classes. I'm going to take one dance class. I'm not going to commit to 5 weeks or 6 years. What you're going to do is find some dance studio and you're going to take one dance class. Then you come back, and after you come down, you're going to take another one, but one at a time to the point. Because the thing is, it's like when I started doing YouTube videos, I was terrified and I wasn't really good at it, but I kept doing it one video at a time. And over a period of years, it got better. And something else that came from facing your fears. I've had 4 or 5 public speaking events, and that's something that used to scare the shit out of me. And I got up there in the mic and I was just, poof, and it came from the YouTube videos because when you do a video, you're doing public speaking. I have 1,000 videos over the last 4 years. It's like 700 on YouTube. I took down about 120. Then there's the videos that's in the Hustler Mindset, the videos on my other YouTube channel, and then the videos on Vimeo. So that's like doing 1,000 speeches. So when you start doing this stuff, you get what I call enjoyable and beneficial byproducts. See, this is where it really gets good. Because when you face your fears, not only are you killing that fear, you're going to get some extra byproducts, some extra additional effects that are going to be good. So you do this one thing and you get 2 or 3 more things out of it. That's why this thing is so important, that you have to face your fears and develop some courage, because it will give you incredible self-confidence. You'll be able to talk to anyone when you get on this path. And that's one of the keys to success, is being able to talk to anyone where they are versus where you want them to be. I have an extremely large vocabulary, and I don't use half of it on YouTube because I'm not trying to be rude or mean, but I just know some people are just not going to know what those words mean. And that's not really effective communication. It doesn't make sense. But when you have a large vocabulary, you could talk to anyone on any level. And if you have to work your way down, you do. Because you have to speak to people where they are, not where you want them to be. And when you start doing all this stuff and you create this action, you're going to create this wave of energy that's going to start to draw people to you. As you start handling this stuff, as you start knocking down your fears, you're going to open up doors to you. People pop up in your life. You'd be like, I'm telling you, it's freaking awesome. Now, none of this is going to happen without consistent action. If you just start like tomorrow and you do it tomorrow, then you don't do it anymore. It's not going to work out. Remember, YouTube videos took me years. From that time of being in the boarding house, it took me years. Now I know when you're going, oh God, years, I want it now, I want it now. This is the thing. If you start now and you live long enough, 5 years from now, 5 years will have passed. So the question is, are you working on stuff to improve you for those 5 years? Because I'm telling you, the benefits are awesome. One day at a time, one step at a time. Now, this is something I was talking about earlier. And this is something I had to learn. Once you learn this stuff, you will never say another negative thing about yourself. You will never say you're stupid. And as a joke is one thing, in jest. But you will learn to not downgrade, denigrate, or say bad stuff about yourself over and over again. Because what you do is start off that energy again. And give you an example of something I used to do, and it took me a minute to lick it. I used to be a speeder. Got a lot of tickets. And I started creating this self-fulfilling prophecy of getting tickets. Like I would see a cop and I would activate this energy. And the cop, if I didn't activate the energy, it's like when someone's looking at you and you can feel it. It's that kind of energy. I would do something to make the cop notice me, and I would be speeding. Then once I got the hang of this, because you have to run your mind. You have to really run your mind. I was doing 95 and I passed the cop and I rocked his car and I didn't even look back. Because I was so intent on getting to that appointment. And later on, I said, dang, I wasn't even thinking about the ticket and I didn't get the ticket. So when you dwell on your fears, when you think about them all the time, what you're doing is, if you're familiar with electricity, like if you outside and you see all those big bulky things near the power lines, those are transformers and step up converters. What they do is keep the current going. So when that current comes in your house, you notice how every plug you have, there's this big block on it. That reduces the current so it doesn't blow up your stuff. Well, what you're doing by thinking about your fears over and over again is you're stepping them up and you're making them bigger and stronger. So, what you have to do, and this is going to take practice, but when you're getting ready to think of something jacked up, you have to mentally stop yourself and say, no, I'm not going to think that. Some jacked up's coming to your mind, you have to reverse it. You're like, no, we're not going to think that, and turn it around. And I know it's going to sound silly, but say, I'm going to win. Or instead of something stupid or evil, put something positive. Like, this used to be a very bad habit of mine. I would see people and just say mentally some of the most jacked up stuff because I'm a really small person at that time. And I would see people on my day and I would try to find out something positive about them. Like, she looks like she makes some great biscuits. I know it sounds crazy. She's probably really smart. He's got some great ability. Just say this stuff about strangers, right? Replacing all that negative chatter, because once you fill your mind with the stuff, you push out all of the BS. You push out the negativity. You push out the fears, because what you put in your mind has impact and effect. So if you're sitting there like, oh, that stupid so and so, and this is one of the reasons, and I'm probably going to do a YouTube video on this because I was chastising someone on my Facebook page who was using the word homo. And I didn't do it on the Facebook page. I messaged him. I'm actually going to do it and just hide his name. And the thing is, it became this conversation. It's like, are you gay? I was like, no, but that's not cool. And that's the thing with these mindsets. People feel entitled to be mean and bigoted and racist to other people because it's like, I would just want to say something. And ask yourself, why do you want to call someone a homo or accost a gay person if they've done nothing to you? I have yet to figure that out, why someone gets in their truck and go out looking for people they don't like. I haven't figured that out. But all of that stuff matters. So reverse what you're thinking. Because with the law of attraction, if you're filling your mind with positive stuff, you're filling your mind with big goals and ambitions and dreams, you will draw those things to you, and you'll draw those people to you that can help you make it. That's how you change it. You have to be vigilant about your mental activity. And once you get to that point, that's the day you start running your life. You will kind of sit back, and it's always a situation of growth. I feel that I'm still growing so much because with social media, I just got to the position where I'm more of a watcher. I don't know if you ever watched read Marvel comics, and there was this guy, the Watcher. He was like really huge, and he just kind of hung out in space. And he just watched the events of the universe. Didn't interfere, had the power to do all kinds of stuff, but they would just watch. So I've kind of become that. And since I've sit back and I watch, and I think I'm better able to handle social media. I don't do all the stupid stuff I used to. But like I said, all of this is a growth process. You're always growing. If you're not growing, you die. So once you kind of get this stuff together, that's when you will start to run your life versus living a life that's run by someone else or run by other people's expectations. You'll be running your life the way that you want to, on your terms, which is a pretty awesome thing when you think about it. All right. What I'm going to do is go ahead and stop this. And, oh, whoops. I knew there was another one. Hold on. Disregard. Because I was like, wait a minute, there should be one more. The button got stuck. Okay. This is going to be a little weird. This is going to be really, really weird. I have my own personal manifesto, and I'm not going to share it with you because it's my manifesto, but it's very different from other people. And it took me about 2 years to write it. I will give you one. And I learned this from working in the hospitals, dealing with a lot of elderly patients. People tend to regret the things they didn't do more so than the fuck ups than they committed. Overwhelmingly, this has been true in my life and other people that I talk to. So, one of the tenets of my manifesto is to do the thing that I want to do, regardless of how insane or crazy it may be. And that's one of the reasons I have all these dating stories and storage auction stories, because I put myself in a lot of crazy situations. And now I'm glad I did because I learned so much. Understand, this is your life. You can design it and do what you want. Many people don't know they have that power. They're waiting on someone to give them permission to do that. And it's really time for you to kind of sit back. And this is going to take some time. Because if you never even thought about, hey, I could write my own personal manifesto for my life. You can include religion, you can include dating, you can include business, anything that you want on like, hey, this is how I am going to run my life. And if you meet someone and your manifesto doesn't work with whatever they're trying to give you, that means you're incompatible. Move on. And sometimes these people who are incompatible will pursue you hard because they're loving your manifesto. Now, how do you write a manifesto? You sit down and you figure out what's really important to you, which takes some exploration. What's really, really important to you? Because see, when you write this manifesto, you're at a serious level of courage because a lot of people feel that it's arrogant to say, hey, this is my life. This is what I want to do. A lot of people feel that, especially very religious people, they feel that their life is not their own, that they are a robot or an instrument of God. And I don't believe in that. And it creates conflict with some of my friends because, I've learned to, that's your belief. This is my belief. We can all believe in what we want. And, I had to really step back from the arrogance that came with it because when you start running your life and taking responsibility for the bad things that happen, you can take credit for the good. But if it's always someone else, you can't really claim the good now, can you? But to write your manifesto, you got to figure out what your core values are. You got to say, okay, who am I? What's important to me? And I give you an example of a conflicted core value. You have a guy that says, your parents, right? Because this is common. The kids are the most important thing in the world to them. They will have pictures, smiling pictures on Facebook. Every poop moment, throw up moment is on Facebook. And you see the pictures and it's like, wow, that's a beautiful family. But if you actually know them, father works 90 hours a week. Mother, I mean, when you really climb in, they're just pretty pictures. Then you have people who don't post pictures on Facebook and they have dinner every night. Your actions are more important than what you say. So if you say that your family is the most important thing in the world to you and you don't spend a lot of time with them, that's nearly not the most important thing in the world to you. And I see that frequently. So you got to sit down and really flesh out your core values. And this take a month. Take 15 minutes a day and it's like, what's really important to me? Just ask yourself what's really important and just put and write it down because as long as you try to do it in your brain, you're going to miss 1,000% of the exercise. I heard this said, I think it was Brian Tracy, and I do believe it. The mere act of writing down a goal improves the chance of it happening 1,000%. The mere act of writing it down. Creating an action plan moves it up to 10,000%. So trying to do it in your brain versus not writing it down, or if you wish, typing it on your iPad. But I highly suggest that you get a pen and paper and you write it down. Because when you're writing it down and you're thinking, you activate different centers in your brain. The same energy that you use to type stuff, that's a different part of your brain working. When you write it on paper, it's a different part of your brain working. I know it's crazy, but it is. And you want to activate those parts of your brain because Look at the language of the people from the 40s to 50s to 60s, compare that to the language of people today. There's a difference. People used to write, and writing forces you to think. It forces you to think, or you're going to mess up. So definitely sit down 15 minutes a day. What are your code of ethics? What are your values? What's really, really important to you? And once again, this is for you. This is not for everyone else. Don't go sharing it. Don't go putting it on Facebook. This is for you. Because once you figure out you, you'll be a very happy you. So this is the deal. Tonight, not tomorrow, do one thing from this webinar. I don't care if you spend 30 seconds like, hey, my code of ethics, you write that on top of the page and you put it somewhere where you can look at it in the morning. That's one thing. It's little bitty steps. If you look at how sand flows from one half of the hourglass to the other, it's a grain at a time. But over time, with consistency, that other side gets full. And that's the whole thing. Just do one thing a day, not 20 things, not 30 things, not 40 things, not 50 things. One thing every day. And you will start to gain momentum. You'll start looking forward to these exercises because what you're doing is instituting a new habit and a new way of thinking, which is hard. So if you're like, I'm going to do 10 things or I'm going to spend, power session Saturday knocking this out. Now, if you're the type of person that can do it, go for it. But consistency is more important than, quantity. Consistency. Because if you do this for the next 6 months, your life will change. If you do this for 30 days real hard, then don't do it anymore. Your life will not change. Consistency is the key. That's the thing. All right. Now we will open up for questions. Let me go here. All right. If anyone has any questions, just go ahead. Let's see. All right. If there's no questions, what I'm going to do, if you're in Sparta at some point, you'll have access to this later on tomorrow. And if you signed up for the webinar, you'll get an email from me once the recorded version is done. Oh, and there they are. This one is from Emmanuel. How do I know that I'm growing in courage? Great question. Your confidence level will increase. Each step that you take, because this is the thing, you can't bullshit yourself. You can bullshit other people, but you know if you're doing the right thing or not. It's like lifting weights. When you put in the work and you get up to heavy weights, you feel real confident getting under the heavy weight because you did the work to get there. You just can't half do it. You're it's 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 like getting fat. It may sneak up on you because one day you'll just realize that you're way more confident. Because I got that question on YouTube. It's like, why are you so confident? And the reason is I've been through a lot of bullshit that I overcame. If you go through a lot of stuff and you don't overcome it, you could be demoralized. But it will come a little bit. You'll start doing stuff. You'll be a little different. Like things that you would be hesitant, you'll just do. And understand, courage is not being scared. Courage is, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if I understand that. Are there any slides that you can share with us before the webinar? I'm not. What exactly are you talking about? I'll hold on a second and let you ask that again because I'm a little confused. Slides of what exactly? Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. When you sign up for the webinar, yeah. So, well, this is the deal. Like when I do the dollar special on YouTube and you come in, it's like you get access to the webinar. and you just get a sign up link. And then all the slides and stuff will actually be in the webinar. And this is, I'm following my own advice. This is something new that I'm trying, whereas I'll make access extremely cheap. And the only reason I'm charging $1 is to keep the children out, because they're crazy people that like to play games and webinars. And the dollar and the fact that them signing up prevents them from showing up, because they have to get their real information. And, like I said, I'm doing this probably for the next 90 days just to see what happens. Do you have a procedure for defining yourself? This is a manual. Yes, I do. Going back to your core values, you got to think what's important to you. And I'm going to give you an example. I have a good friend who likes fat women. He loves fat women. He's always loved fat women since we were kids. But due to social sanctions, people saying that you should be with this, because he's a very good looking guy. But he likes fat chicks. And I would always see him, because you're friends. And typically young men are very mean to each other. And I would see him looking at robust women all the time. And I mean, with that look. And I was like, "You like her?" He's like, "Yeah, I do." "Well, like, go out with her." And he just looked at me, because the way that he looks, he's supposed to be with this extremely attractive, really small woman. And he likes big girls. And he always has. And I'm like, "Do it." And then one day he just started being himself, and he got really happy because he defined what he liked. See, defining yourself may actually be countercultural, counter to what culture says you should be. Defining yourself is saying, this is what I like. I don't give a damn who likes it, and I'm going to do it. That's defining yourself. You got to figure it out, because everyone's got this different thing. There are some people who are going to do the marriage and the 2.5 kids, and that's actually who they are. And there's other people that is not who they are. I'll give it a little bit more thought, because I may do it. Like I said, the goal for the next 90 days, or well, 80 something now, since we're 2 weeks in, for I guess for the next 6 weeks, or whoa, more than that. For the next 10 weeks, there will be more stuff. So I may make that a webinar after I think about it a little bit more. Because what I'm doing is going back in time and reverse engineering what I did. Because people are like, well, how did you become successful? And sometimes I'm like, that's a good question, because there's the immediate answer that's on the tip of your brain. But when you really think about it, that's not really it. A lot of what made me successful today actually happened 15 years ago. And it was a journey, and you just keep doing it. Any more questions? Storage auction webinars are tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am going to put out a calendar tomorrow. Meant to do it today, but I spent all day working on projects. I wasn't even on Facebook that much. So I'm gonna put out the calendar, because there's gonna be, let's see, probably. Well, hold on. Let's see, Hustler University. Okay, I can actually show you. All right, this is what's coming up with the storage auctions, and there will be more. Like I said, tomorrow I'll put the calendar together. September 17th, September 19th, 24th. That's a different sign up, but that's what's coming up. And then there's going to be another credit webinar. There's a lot of stuff that's coming, like I said, in the next 10 weeks. So you've signed up. If you're here, I will send you an email. In this series, let me think about that and get back to you. Tomorrow's a planning day during the day. Then I got the webinar at night. Whatever I do, because I've got your email address, and as I get it set up, I will put it out. So I'm going to ask you this. You seem to like this type of webinar. I'm talking to the enterprise. because I'm going to actually, like I said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming out. I'm not going to try to overwhelm you with it tonight, but I can make more of this happen if that's what you desire. Just let me know. And that's yes. Okay. All right. Like I said, this is recorded. I'll look at it again. And if there's no more questions, since it's 9:01, I'm going to shut it down. And I want to say thanks to everyone that came out. I really appreciate it. And I will see you on the good side.